status to this position. Republican prisoners, from the very start of their incarceration, have a history of protest, especially when they're being criminalised. Now, with the closure of the H blocks in Roundcase, political status was ended, so future Republican prisoners found themselves in Maghaberry and were treated as criminals. The characteristics of this criminalisation took many forms, but one form was isolation, which meant putting you in a cell on a wing with maybe 6 and 12 loyalists on the same wing. So it meant, really, for your own safety, you had to stay in your cell. Now, if you were out at your own risk, put it that way, and many prisoners did do that and suffered brutal assaults. Apart from the isolation, there was also intimidation of families, the best way to put it. When the families came to visit, they were often told that their loved ones didn't want to see them, or were in the gym, or ludicrous reasons like this. They were also refused access to religion, to express their religion. The purpose-built church within inside Maghaberry was exclusively used for loyalist prisoners and ODCs. In addition to this, there was also tampering with food, tampering with water. There was also no access to reading materials sometimes, and no access to mail that was sent in by the loved ones. So it culminated then in 2003. Things came to a head when some prisoners were attacked and a weapon was produced on the wing by loyalists, and these 2 Republican prisoners were badly beaten, and only the gun jammed, they probably would have been killed. So a decision then was taken to mount a campaign, firstly on the outside, through the press, through the media, politicians, clergy, anybody that could come to our aid. And the crux of the matter was segregation in the wing. We wanted segregation, we wanted to be recognised as political prisoners through diplomat courts, special courts. So if there were special courts, then we must be special prisoners. So as the campaign on the outside intensified, then the prisoners on the inside, the campaign against them by the prison authorities intensified as well. Strip searching was one of these methods used to demoralise the prisoners. The use of strip searching then is a way of, if you refused the strip searching, they would offer you a box visit. Now this box was, I mean a box, you know, but 2 of these desks put together was the size of the box. So that was point blank refused. So then our loved ones would be told then that we refused to see them. So they would get demoralised as well. Also you would have vindictive charges for not opening your mouth. Because they would like to check inside your mouth to see had you anything in your mouth. This was maybe after a 2 minutes conversation with the same person. So then, as it intensified, we were denied access actually to washing facilities within the jail. So, as we couldn't get any recourse, and the campaign now seemed to be getting nowhere, we decided to go on a dirty Now this involved, everyone knows, it involved the seen the video earlier on, so we don't have to explain what that's about. But as we were separated all throughout the jail, instead of affecting just ourselves in the jail, we affected the whole jail population, 600 plus. Now because of that, a tactic we used, because we knew that if we continued the dirty protest right through, we would be all put into a block on our own, and they would let us continue that protest, you know, ad infinitum. So what we decided to do was to go on the protest for 5 to 6 days, come off the protest for 2 to 3 days. It took a bit of organising, and communication was really bad in the jail this time, but eventually every Republican prisoner got the message, the tactic, this was the tactic. So by doing that, we still had a right, under their own prison rules, till visits and till legal visits. Because when you're in dirty protest, you're classed as contaminated. So they won't let nobody have any access to you. Should this be your solicitor? Should it be your family? Should it be other prisoners, or even the screws themselves? So we knew that we couldn't stay on a dirty protest indefinitely, but sooner or later we were going to have to face a hunger strike to bring it to an end, because we've seen there how long the prisoners were on the blanket and the brutalisation that they went through. So we knew that this would take a detrimental effect on our families on the outside, so we knew how to bring this to a head. So on the outside then, the Steele report a bit of October 2003. Steele and a pastor, a Roman Catholic pastor and Church of Ireland pastor, came in and visited the jail. And the recommendations of their report were accepted, not only by the Northern Ireland office, but by the British government and the prison management. But of course, around that time, I can remember clearly, there was an election coming up, and maybe that had some kind of effect on it. So as a result of that report, we were granted association as a group, recognised as a group of Republican prisoners. Our structures inside the jail, our command structures, were recognised by the governor in the jail and all the other screws. As well as that, in addition to that, we were allowed recreation for 4 hours a day, but this was to be increased gradually to give the prison staff time to adjust to that. So it wasn't just going to be brought in and they were to feel as if they had been defeated in some way. So this was brought in gradually. Now, we were all inside a block called Foyle House, if we can remember, or Leggett House, it was one of the two. But there was a great feeling then of comradeship, and you could converse. There was access to telephones, there was access, no bothers with visits, both legal and family visits. So during this time, everything seemed to be running smoothly. Then this happened to change when there were at the time there was purpose-built units being renovated for us. Row House was the one that they were eventually put to. So whenever the prisoners arrived in Row House, the prison management started to roll back all these concessions, call them what they will. We say that there's our right. So these rights started to be taken away gradually, and the strip searching, which was virtually done away with then, started to be brought back in again. So the combination of all this is we have to look at it, and I'd just like to, in conclusion, I would just like to read you a quote at the time. When we were in confrontation with the screws on the wing, he says, this is not our fault, we're only doing what we're told. Even when they were brutalising you, they would say, we're only doing what we're told. And the head of the Prison Officers Association at that time, Marcus Lewis, was quoted as saying, the prison service currently owes the prison staff in Ex-Maghaberry 50 hours in unpaid overtime in time off lieu. Officers cannot get time off. So that was all that was interested to them. It was a monetary thing to them. And the prisoners were being used to improve their pay conditions. And another quote which he said then when he was confronted about the brutalisation, how can you go home to your families after brutalising people and sit with your children on your knee and all the rest, when you dehumanise other people. And he says, the staff, he says, we don't make prison policy. He says, the government does. We implement it. So we'd just like to hand over them to the next speaker that it is not the prison staff that is implementing this policy. It is the government, and always bear that in mind. Thanks very much.